Hi everyone, welcome to Morning with Madi. Today I'm joined by Troy Farkas, an author, public speaker, and podcaster who has been sharing meaningful stories about the people, businesses, and newsmakers of the Seacoast on his show Seacoast Stories. While we do talk about Seacoast Stories and how it came to be, this episode is also about Troy, his journey into the world of podcasting, what fuels his creativity, and what's next for Seacoast Stories. In the time I've known Troy, I have noticed his great ability to make other people feel welcome. He truly knows how to build community. We also talk about his journey with type 1 diabetes, and of course we reflect on his 20s, a topic he explores in his book, Surrender, a guide to living your best life in your 20s. Before we dive in, I wanted to give this episode a little grace. We ran into some unexpected audio challenges, so much that we had to pass a single mic back and forth. While the audio might sound a little different than usual, I hope you stick with us. You can listen to Seacoast Stories on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow the podcast on Instagram at Seacoast Stories. You can also connect with Troy on Instagram at Troy_Farkas. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too. Thanks for tuning in. Hi, Troy. How's it going?
Going great. Thank you so much for having me, Madi.
Thank you for coming. I wanted to know, how was your week?
My week has been up and down. I had some emotional lows in the personal life, but professionally, it's been really good. Really getting back into the swing of things for my day job at Spotify. I was just on vacation for a while, so got back in the swing, back into the fold. I'm going on a work trip in a few weeks that I'm excited for, that I'm gearing up for. And then I've just been doing a lot of networking events in the area and meeting a lot of really great people. So week's been good. I'm in a good place.
When did you experience joy this week?
Yesterday, I had several run-ins with just people I know from the area, friends. And that's what I love so much about this area that we live in, and I live in Portsmouth specifically. Small town, everyone knows everyone. I was pumping gas this morning, and at the gas station, I see walking out of the shop is the owner or the head brewer at Loaded Question Brewing, which is where you and I have hung out before. And they brewed the Seacoast Stories IPA. So I just saw him at the gas station. We're having a little conversation at the pump. The other day I was at Laney and Lou doing a meeting, and my friend Maggie was there, and then it was really cold. So after I left, she said, "Hey, can I drive you home?" So things like that, just running into people and just having those little chit-chatty conversations as we're going about our daily lives. That has brought me a lot of joy.
Awesome. I wanted to know about your yoga retreat.
Ooh, my yoga retreat. Yeah, so I went to Mexico a few weeks ago, first time, on a retreat led by Sarah Olson, who is the Seacoast yoga retreat leader. A lot of women are leading them in this area now, but she's the one who really blazed the trail, has been doing it for a long time. And I loved it, Madi. So rejuvenating, relaxing. I am a person who is go, go, go all of the time, not good at relaxing, not good at being still and not doing anything. And so sometimes to force myself to do that, I have to remove myself from my reality and go far, far away. So I got to do that in Mexico, where we had, our AM yoga, our PM yoga. That's my kind of vacation. Like I'm not just sitting on a beach doing nothing. I know some people are into that. That's not me. So it's like there's some of that, but there's exercise built into the day. And there were some excursions during the day as well, hiking and doing some volunteer work and things of that nature. Food was amazing. Everything fresh, well prepared. We were at this resort that does yoga retreats, so not their first rodeo. And then I just got really close with a bunch of the people that I was on the retreat with, including my teacher, Stephanie Polini, as well, who's my go-to in the area. And it's amazing what a week in paradise doing yoga with total strangers can do. I mean, I didn't know these people at all at the beginning, and then by the end, it's like we didn't want to leave each other.
That's awesome. I love hearing about that. And again, I feel like you're all things wellness. You really like to live a healthy life, so I love hearing about it. I wanted to talk more about how you started Seacoast Stories. So for those who do not know, Troy, you have a Seacoast Stories podcast. You began this about a year ago.
June of 2023.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yes. So the inspiration for Seacoast Stories, no, I'm sorry, not June 2023, June 2024. Gosh, I forgot we're in 2025. So I've been hosting my own podcast for several years, since 2020. The most recent one I hosted was this one called The Found Generation. It was a wellness, self-improvement podcast because that's stuff that I'm really passionate about. And so I just got this crazy idea last year to host a live version of it. And so I did that in Portsmouth at the Music Hall Lounge, which is a cute little 100-seat venue downtown. This was kind of a reckless idea in hindsight. I was very new to the area, 5-6 months there. No one in this area listened to this podcast because it wasn't necessarily tailored to the Seacoast audience. And all in all, for it being a Monday night on a bled day in March, 75, 80 people came out, had a really great time, really good conversations with the 3 guests that joined me that night. And the reception to it and the attendance and the feedback I got was so great. And it just got the wheels turning in my head where I was like, the people in this area specifically that we live in seem to really be into supporting local. There seems to be a desire to hear from local people and to show up for them. And I'm not knocking the local media in any way, but there's not necessarily a go-to place for learning about all of the amazing things that people in this area are doing. I've been working in podcasting for years. I've not only been hosting my own shows for years, but I'm a full-time producer in the industry as well. I used to work at ESPN. I now work at Spotify. I've done freelance. I've produced thousands of episodes of podcasts in the last 6 years that I've been doing this. And so I thought I should pivot this health and wellness thing. I've been doing that for a while, not really as fulfilling anymore. This clearly is the path I need to go. I need to serve these local people, hear these local stories, and then just selfishly get some friends in the area. That's a great way to meet people. And it is one of the best decisions I've ever made because every conviction that I had going into the show or every suspicion I had, I think has been justified. I've made friends. It's been so well received, more received. It was received better, faster than I thought. Like it really took off faster than I thought is what I'm trying to say. Just hosted a live version of it, which you were at front row. Thank you so much for being there. That was a sold out show. Tickets sold out quickly for that. And I'm just having personally so much fun doing it. I've never done any type of work more meaningful and fulfilling than that. So that's how Seacoast Stories came to be.
I love that. I love the live show too. It was so fun. It was lots of activity. I think the room was filled with positive energy. It was great. I'm looking forward to seeing what else you have in store for this upcoming year. I also wanted to know some of your favorite moments of the past conversations you've had, along with anything you're looking forward to.
Yeah, so there's been so many great conversations that I've had. The first ones that come to my mind, I mean, I feel weird calling this a favorite moment, but I did an episode with Vernon Family Farm, which for those of you who don't know, Vernon Family Farm is a very popular farm in this area. However, they're a bit controversial. There's people who have very strong feelings about this situation. They are in an ongoing legal battle with their neighbors. During the summers and falls, they do these weekend events. There's concerts. There's a bunch of kids running around. There's foot traffic. There's car traffic. And this has made their neighbors pretty upset with them over the increased noise and dirtiness and potential trespassing that happens on the neighbor's property as a result of these events at their farm. So that episode was the one I received the most feedback on, whether that was in support of the Vernons or in protest of the Vernons. Definitely the most listened to episode by far as well. And I just really enjoyed having that conversation, having a conversation that was newsworthy, I suppose, because it definitely got people talking. That was really the episode that really contributed to Seacoast Stories taking off in the way that it has. So I just loved that episode. The episode I did with the owner of the bowling alley where the Lewiston shooting was in Maine was a real challenge of everything that I've ever done in my career up until this point, or not a culmination. It involved my journalism backgrounds, interviewing. I mean, you can't prepare to have a conversation like that. There's only so many people who have had an experience like that. I mean, that is the highest of highest tragedies anyone can have happen. A shooting at your business that you have owned for years, that this man, Justin Jure, grew up going to this bowling alley, and then he bought it when it came available. I can't imagine what that was like. So for me personally, that was just a wild challenge as an interview because I had never done anything like that before. Few people have ever had the opportunity to interview someone like that in that position. So for me personally, that was a big challenge, and I think I did a pretty good job with it. You know, I'm not a journalist, but in interviewing, you're supposed to be pretty down the middle and not be super invested personally, emotionally in the story itself. But it's such a gripping story, and as I was listening, I was getting emotional. I've had, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 people have cried on the episode, and I just kind of, when that happens, I just have to just sit there and let them have their moment. But I also then have to ask the next question. I can't break down crying either. That when he started crying during that episode, I couldn't help myself because it's just such a wildly emotional thing. So I'll stop being a downer. I've made some really good friends from the episodes as well. My friend Andrea, who owns Brass Tacks Photography in downtown Portsmouth, she's a type 1 diabetic. I'm a type 1 diabetic. So us meeting through the show has been so great for both of us, just to, because it's a disease that takes up so much brain space and runs so much of your life. And if you don't have it, you can't possibly understand what living with it is like. So she and I have each other now to just bitch to each other about what it's like having this, and any problems we're having, we can go to each other and just be really good support systems for one another, which is so important to have. And I'm so thankful to have her in my life. Those are just some of the first things that come to my mind, but there's been so many great moments, and yeah, it's very fulfilling.
I think that you definitely have a skill of making new connections and friends. If you listen to the podcast, there are a lot of mention of community, and I wanted to know, what does community mean to you?
Yes, this is a question I've asked on the show several times. I mean, community, kind of what I was talking about earlier, about just running into people, seeing familiar faces, asking, hey, how did your kid's soccer game go this weekend? Or, if just knowing that someone has an event coming up and asking before, hey, good luck, or how did it go, whatever. I think that's community. I think it's showing up for others. I think it's like coming to the live podcast, and then because someone came to my live show and I'm grateful, okay, how can I show up for you at your thing? I think that's community. It's taking from the people and it's giving back to the people. It's showing up. It's doing what you say you're going to do, showing up to the events that you say you're going to do. I think those are all examples of community. And then, of course, just supporting local. You will always see me bouncing around coffee shops and bars and breweries and restaurants and bookstores and putting the dollars back into the very community that you live in. There's many different ways to contribute to the greater sense of community, but those are the things that come to my mind.
I love that. You definitely live those words, and I am excited to see what you continue to do with Seacoast Stories, and then just continuing to live in the Seacoast area. I know that you've bounced around a lot during your 20s. What made you decide to settle down in the Portsmouth, New Hampshire Seacoast area?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of bouncing around. I love traveling. It's a big part of me, and I'm so curious, and I love putting myself in new situations. I love getting out of my comfort zone and just throwing myself into the fire and seeing how I adapt. Human beings are highly adaptable, and I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. A lot of us are scared to take chances, to leave a relationship, to move somewhere new, to leave one job that's not working out for you and get a new job. We say we want these things, but then when push comes to shove, we would actually rather. There's some great quote. It's like, we are more scared of or like we would rather be unhappy than face the unknown, because the unknown, it could potentially be worse than your situation, but it could also potentially be better. And so I love throwing myself into new situations, and traveling is one of those ways. And I'm weird where like getting into new situations, I've done it so many times. That is my comfort zone. Staying in familiar situations, showing up to the same places over and over again, seeing the same things every day, that is weird for me. And so after I'd been in Portsmouth for 4 months when I moved here, I was like, all right, I've done it, seen it. I've done a lot of things around here. I get the vibe here. I'm ready to go and go somewhere else. Maybe go to, everyone's told me I should move to New York City. So I was going to do that at some point, finally check that one off. But then something very specific happened. I was at a yoga class at Three Bridges Yoga, which is the studio I go to in Portsmouth. And this was just a few months into me having diabetes. This is not a disease I've lived with my entire life, very new. So I'm in yoga class one day and I wear this sensor on my arm, which tells me what my blood sugar levels are, whether I'm too high or too low. And if that is the case, it just goes off with this very annoying alarm. And so I'm in yoga class one day, my blood sugar crashes, this alarm goes off during the middle of class, yoga, very zen, quiet, peaceful, and then this piercing alarm goes off. And I've broken the cardinal rule of having no phones in class because everyone knows that I've broken rules. So I was very embarrassed. There's 60 people in this class. I have to step over everyone, and I feel terrible. And I'm also on the verge of death because my blood sugar is crashing. So everything is falling apart. Then as I'm getting my stuff together, I'm about to leave. The teacher, Stephanie, who I referenced earlier, she comes over to me at the door and says, Troy, can I get you anything? Are you okay? Do you need anything? And then I was embarrassed, and me being like an egotistical man was like, no, I'm fine. I got this. And then I bolted out the door. An hour later, I get an email from Stephanie, subject line, checking in, are you okay? And then once I was no longer on the verge of death and had taken care of myself and had time to sit with that, I realized, okay, I've been here a few months and I've made an impression on someone who cares about me enough to check in with me not once but twice and to make sure I'm okay with this disease that I'm very much not okay with, still grappling with it, still figuring it out. And just to be supported by someone in that way just really sparked something within me where I was like, you know what? The life I've always wanted to have, of a life of community, of having deep relationships rather than surface level ones that come with moving somewhere new every 4 months. Maybe this could be the place where I can find what I've always wanted. Maybe I should stick around and give this another chance. And when I made that decision to stay on the Seacoast after that, things changed almost overnight. The right people started entering my life. I started finding the right hangouts. I started bumping into everyone. And then Seacoast Stories was just really a celebration of that decision. And things have only gotten better and better. And I know they're going to continue getting better and better.
That's great. I've heard that story before, but I think it's very powerful and just goes to show like how impactful like just being kind to one another is and going the extra mile to make sure someone is okay. That it ultimately made it so that you did not move away from the Seacoast. So I love hearing about that. I wanted to touch base on, you had mentioned that you find it comfortable to put yourself into new situations over and over and over. I have been curious, what drives you to be this way? And how have you built this, like this muscle almost, to keep on doing, keep on putting yourself in uncomfortable situations?
So much of how I live my life is a direct protest to how I was raised. I was raised by, I love my family. I love my parents. I was raised in a very overprotective household. As a kid, if I was going over to a friend's house, I had to be in constant contact with my parents. If I left to walk to the gas station with my friends 0.2 miles away to go get a Slurpee, I had to let my parents know. And even if I did let my parents know, they might be like, no, you're not walking out at 8 p.m. on a Friday night. That's dangerous. So that was the environment I was raised in. We went to Cape Cod 15 years in a row for summer vacation. We didn't travel. We didn't do anything new ever on that vacation. We did the exact same thing, same restaurants, same mini golf places, same beach. And I just got so tired of that. And I majored in history in school. And so in my ninth and 10th and 11th grade history textbooks, I was seeing pictures of the Eiffel Tower and of Big Ben and of all these crazy art museums around the world. And I was like, wait, there's a whole other world outside of Clifton Park, New York, where I grew up. I never really experienced that. I didn't know other ways of existence existed. And so I just got really curious. And then I made the decision to study abroad in college, a decision which my parents fought me tooth and nail against because, quote, there's terrorists in Europe. I think there's some terrorists in the United States as well. So that one never computed with me. So I made the decision to go study abroad in Scotland. And then when I was in Scotland, I traveled all throughout Europe as well. And it's realized there is a whole other world out there. And I'm deeply curious about learning about all the different types of ways that people experience this life, because believe it or not, there is more than the United States. There is more than New England. And so I just got really curious about that. And that was such a life-changing experience for me. And I think I just really realized that, I love my family, but I disagree with the way I was raised. And there's so much more to learn, do, and see. And for me to become the best me, the most well-rounded me, I need to do and see as much as possible.
You mentioned curiosity, to see other things, to do other things. I think that curiosity is one of my very big values. And being curious also leads to creativity in my head. I wanted to know, what does creativity mean to you? You obviously create a lot. You create content. You could be considered a creator. So what does creativity mean to you? And how do you draw that from being curious?
That's a fun question, because I feel like up until very recently, I wouldn't have told you that I was creative, because I think in the traditional sense of the word, we think creative is you're really artsy and you know how to draw, or you can do graphic design and come up with all these abstract concepts. But I think if you just break down the word, creative means to create. And I've been creating for a long time. I've been writing forever. Since social media became so easy to make stuff on, I've been creating on social media for years. I've been creating podcasts, creating blog posts. So I don't necessarily think you have to be an outside the box abstract person to be creative. I now would consider myself creative, even though a lot of what I do is very black and white. My blog posts and my book are very much like straight to the point. You're not reading in between the lines. I'm telling you what I think. There's no gray area for you to figure out. There's no like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There's no hidden meanings here. So, I think being creative literally is just creating, just putting shit out there, whether you think it's good or not, just speaking your truth and putting out whatever you want. So I now say I'm creative. I would not have told you that a few years ago, but I'm proud of it, and I'm just fully leaning into it right now. I'm not really self-conscious anymore about what I'm creating. I would say I used to be, and I think anyone who tells you, especially when they start, that they're not concerned about how they're perceived or their quote-unquote art is perceived, I think they would be lying. I may have said that a few years ago just to convince myself that that was true, but I wouldn't have fully believed it. I now am in a mode that can only come through so many reps and the 10,000 hours. Like, I have so much experience putting myself out there now and creating that I really do not care what you think of me. I'm going to say what is true for me and what I believe needs to be put out there. And that is a really good place to get to. And I hope every creative person, however you identify, can get to that, because that's when things really start changing for you, I think.
Sure. I wanted to ask you, how do you get the time? How do you make time to create?
Yeah, it's very deliberate. I have a rule That did I break that for this today? I kind of did break this rule, but I generally don't break this rule. I have a no meetings before 12 p.m. rule because I'm a morning person. The morning is my creative time where I create stuff. I cannot create stuff at 4 p.m. I'm not a night owl, just a different part of my brain switches on. I'm burnt out from creating. The inspiration is gone. So I save the back half of the day for the more like checklist tasks or the meetings or the things that I don't need that part of my brain for. So that's when I make my creative time. The system that I have in place says no to the person who wants to get coffee at 9 a.m., to the person who wants to have, to the friend who wants to have a phone call at 10 a.m. or whatever. I just try to rearrange that stuff to the back of the day. So that's my creative time when I'm writing, when I am writing scripts for my podcast, or when I'm voicing something for the podcast, or when I'm planning out a podcast, or when I'm making something for social media. That all happens before 12 p.m. So I think, as I said in the book, I think saying I'm busy is the biggest like lie you could ever say. Sure, we're all busy, but if you really want to do something, you'll find the time to do it. So whenever someone asks you to do something and you say I'm busy, you're really just saying to them, I don't care about you enough to make this thing happen. So I always make the time to create because it's a value of mine. It's very important to me. And yeah, I'm never too busy to create because I literally build my life around it because that's what I do.
That's very special, and I admire you for that. Outside of just the podcast, you have written a book, and I wanted to hear more about it. There was some great things in there. Can you share what people can find, what kind of insight they can find by reading your book and share that?
Yeah, so this book I wrote, published it actually on the same day I was rushed to the hospital for type 1 diabetes. So what a way to celebrate a lifelong accomplishment. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a family of writers and editors, so writing is really in my blood. It's always come naturally to me. If you ask me, Troy, what could you do for a career? I would say be an author. That would be the dream. And so growing up this way, I always had a dream to publish a book. And so I just, during COVID, when we were all contemplating our lives, I was like, all right, this is the time to get started on a book. I have no excuses now. I'm locked up. I can get started on this. And so it was an on and off process for, 3 years, I would say, writing, revising, rewriting, adding, subtracting, the editing process of getting with a professional editor, book design, or the cover design, the promotion. I self-published rather than going through a traditional publisher, which does streamline a lot of the process, but still it took a very long time to make sure that everything was exactly right. This book is called Surrender, A Guide to Living Your Best Life in Your Twenties, which really plays into the theme of me just being really interested in self-improvement and development and whatnot. And I just remember when I was 21, I graduated college a year early, so I was a bit younger. So I graduated at 21. I'm entering the workforce. I worked at ESPN here at this big, massive company. Like I'm already at the cream of the crop company in the industry I was in, sports media. And I moved to rural Connecticut. I didn't know anyone. All my friends were still in college. So I'm working midnight on a Saturday night and I'm watching my friends' Snapchat stories of them partying, enjoying their senior year of college that I didn't get to have. And I was miserable. I was the low man on the totem pole at the company, so I had to do all the work that no one wanted to do. This is what you do as you're getting your foot in the door in an industry. And I was mentally unhealthy, physically unhealthy. It was a miserable life, and I was so lost. And I was like so far removed from any career goals I had, and I just felt like I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And so this book really, I did eventually figure out my life. I mean, I'm still figuring it out, but I do have a much clearer sense of who I am and what I want for my life, but I had no idea then. And so this book really is for that kid, that 21, 22-year-old kid, fresh out of college or whatever educational path you choose to go down, who just feels like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know who I am. I don't even know where to start. So this book is really kind of a guidebook for the lost 20-something. It's not a traditional book. It's not a narrative. You could pick it up at page 68 and be totally fine. It's just a collection of essays on various subjects that may or may not pertain to a young person, to whether that's financial literacy, figuring out what type of industry you should be in, about networking, about how to present in the workplace, navigating love and relationships and social media and phone addiction. Gen Z gets a bad rap for being addicted to their phones and technology. Like, you would too. Anyone of any generation, if you were born in the era in which they were, like, I feel so bad for, I mean, I'm in Gen Z too, like by days. I'm technically Gen Z. Like, we grew up in such a great era, but also such a bad era. And so, this book is really for young people who want to right the ship. So if you're a young person listening, or if you're a parent with a young person in your life and you don't understand them, this is a good way to get into their heads.
I applaud you for writing a book. I feel like it's what everyone wants to do and they never actually do it. So that's amazing. I wanted to ask you, what are you most grateful for reflecting on your 20s?
Wow. I am most grateful for all of the people who took a chance on me when they didn't have to, I would say. I'm grateful for Dan Z. His name's hard to pronounce. Dan Z at ESPN, whom I emailed on my third day of employment there, because Dan Z was producing a podcast for this guy named Jeremy Schaap, who is an icon in media, and he was an icon of mine. And I found out that Dan Z produced Jeremy's show, and so I was just like, Dan, I'm new here. You can say no, but can I come help out? Can I come shadow? And literally on my fourth day of work, I'm talking to my idol in this industry and now working with him, and he sees me as an equal of sorts. Like, what is my life? And so I got to do that. I got to work with Jeremy Schaap hand in hand, learn from the absolute best of the best in the industry, worked with him for a few years, and then someone in ESPN's podcasting department took a chance on me to create a job for me. Adrian Wojnarowski, who is a legend in NBA media circles, took a chance on me and let me produce a documentary podcast for him. This guy, Ariel Helwani, took a chance on me. He's the #1 reporter for mixed martial arts. He took a chance on me and said, I want that guy to be my producer. He seems like a grinder. He knows what he's doing. I want to be surrounded by him. And then I left ESPN, and Ariel brought me along to Spotify when he joined Spotify. I've just had an entire career of people believing in me, taking a chance on me when they really didn't need to, probably could have gone with someone else. So yeah, I would say I'm grateful for all the people who believed in me, because it's led me to some incredible places.
That's really special, and I'm glad you have those people in your circle and continue to grow that circle too. I wanted to say we are running a little short on time because your parking expires in about 5 minutes. Did you want to talk more? We can wrap it up if you'd like.
I'm a talker. I'm always down to talk more. I'll take my chances with the UNH parking. And maybe I can negotiate something if they give me a fine. I'll say, listen, I'll shout you out on Seacoast Stories for giving me a ticket, and you'll get big public backlash if you give me a ticket. So if you have like 2 more questions, let's do that.
Okay. So I was curious about your journey with diabetes. I did not, truthfully, so I only know like surface level about diabetes. What would you want someone in your circle or just anyone in the public to know and how to support people with diabetes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't know much about diabetes either before I got it. I mean, my mom is a type 2 diabetic. She'd had it for 9 years before I got diagnosed, and I really didn't know much about it. So just for you or for anyone listening, at its most basic, there's 2 types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is generally something that you are diagnosed with in adolescence. It's hereditary. It is completely out of your control, you getting it. It can be, to a much less common, you can also get it via a virus, which is how I got it. So, because it doesn't run in my family. Type 2 is more often than not because of your own actions, whether that's a lack of exercise or an unhealthy diet. That is generally something that develops later in life because of areas that you have fallen short in. Type 1 is reversible. Type 2 is not. You can take back control if you right the course with your behaviors. Now, type 1, your body, your pancreas, produces no insulin. Type 2, your body, and I always mess this up, it's like you produce insulin, but it doesn't use it the correct way. Either way, you have to inject yourself with insulin. And what insulin does is it controls your blood sugar. So every time you eat, your blood sugar goes up and down based on what you eat. And if you have a healthy pancreas that operates correctly, your blood sugar, like, it will spike when you have a candy bar, but it will go right back down. Me, as a type 1 diabetic, if I ate that candy bar without insulin, it would spike and spike and spike and spike. So I have to act as my own pancreas and make calculations to determine how much insulin I need so that I eat that candy bar and it spikes and it goes back down, but not too far down, because if it goes too far down, I might die. So I'm constantly playing a game of ping pong with myself, fighting a high on one side, a low on one side, and trying to stay in the middle of it all where the net is. So you can understand that this would be something that's very physically and mentally taxing, because else your blood sugar level, like if you're high, your body feels weird. If you're low, your body feels weird. And if you're in a social situation where you have to be on or you're performing, your blood sugar has to be good, because if you're low or high, it's going to affect the way that you present to the world and how you show up. So it's a very taxing thing to have. So if you have a diabetic in your life, I mean, honestly, like Stephanie did with me, that's why that was so powerful. Just, are you good? Can I get you anything? If I'm low and my blood sugar is low, you need to spike it quickly with sugar. Can I get you an orange juice? Can I get you some berries? Can I get you some raisins, some fruit snacks, whatever? Or can I hold any of those things for you? Is there anything I can hold for you? Because I travel with supplies everywhere I go. Those are some good ways to support the diabetics in your life. It's a little, but it means so much, because a lot of us are self-conscious or embarrassed that we have to do this because we're not normal. Our bodies don't work right. I personally am embarrassed sometimes that I haven't fully leaned into my identity as a type 1 diabetic yet. So when people let me know that I am supported or held or cared for in some way, that really means a lot.
I appreciate all of your insight, and I definitely will keep it in my brain. I know that your days are filled with podcasting and creating for your full-time role and Seacoast Stories, and then you're very active in the gym, and you do yoga. How are you, and then you're also managing diabetes, how are you designing the life that you want to live? How are you being intentional with your time?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for the most part right now, I am living the life that I want for myself, where I'm doing all the things that I value. I'm creating stuff. I'm creating strong relationships. I'm getting outside and walking and hitting the gym and being curious and learning in the podcast conversations I have, but also in the books that I read and I don't doom scroll too much, but when I do, I have the educational stuff in my algorithm. So, I just fill my days with all that stuff. I don't waste time. I'm very good at time management. I've always been very good at time management. I'm very efficient with my time. And so that I make sure that pretty much down to a T, every minute of my day reflects a value of mine. At the end of every day, I journal at the beginning of the day, and at the end of the day, I just run down a list of all the things I've done today. And it's usually a pretty extensive list, and it's something that I'm really proud of. So yeah, I'm very intentional with my time. Don't waste my time. Time is the most important resource we have, I believe, more so than money is. A lot of people will say differently, but I believe that time, since it is non-renewable, since we will never live this second and this second and this second again, that we should try to take advantage of that time as much as we should before it's too late.
That's some great advice. I was curious, what are you looking forward to this year with all the time that we have? Only less than 365 days left. We have about 11 months left to the year. So what what are you looking forward to? What should other people look forward to coming from you?
I was in Las Vegas in the summer of 2022. And
Can I stop you right there?
yes,
Doesn't everything in Vegas stay in Vegas?
not this story. I've never said this one. So I'm in Vegas on a work trip, and I meet this woman who was the ex-wife of a UFC champion. I've worked in combat sports for a while, so the UFC is like a fighting organization. And this woman stops me after complimenting my eyes. I love when my eyes get complimented. So for any of you, that's the way to my heart. She says to me, I have psychic powers. 3 years from now, July 22, so July 25, 3 years from now, you are going to know a happiness unlike anything you have ever felt before. So I've had that in the back of my mind the last few years. The life that I'm building right now, I can very much see a path to where July 25, I am the happiest version of myself that I've ever been, where the relationships in my life are exactly the kinds of relationships I've always wanted, both personal and romantic, where the work I'm doing with Seacoast Stories, I've always wanted to just do my own thing. I've always wanted to create my own stuff, be in full control of my destiny, not necessarily take orders from other people. I've just always been entrepreneurial and a self-starter and self-motivated, and I just like putting my butt on the line all the time. So I can see a path to where all of that is happening in July 25, and I am so excited for that because I think that's going to happen.
I think that you're manifesting it, but you're also doing the things to make that happen. So the action is following that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to checking back in with you in July, see how that's working out for you. I know that you're always bouncing around from all the coffee shops in Portsmouth and the Seacoast. What would you recommend for some people visiting Portsmouth or the Seacoast? What places would you recommend? And then what are your favorite drink orders?
Oh, baby. Okay, so yeah, big coffee guy. I'm a snob. I don't really do any fancy lattes or frappuccinos. I've never really gotten into that. So I just like a black coffee, a black Americano, the occasional cappuccino. My favorite coffee shop in Portsmouth is Wild Valentine. Have you ever been there before? Yeah, so that's my favorite place. It's a combo coffee shop and flower shop. It's really cute. If you Google coffee shops in Portsmouth, it doesn't come up because it identifies as a flower shop. So the tourists don't really know about it. It's a locals only place. The vibes are great there. The food is great. They have oatmeal, and I love oatmeal. So I love hanging out at Wild Valentine. Otherwise, I mean, if you're just visiting, just walk around the towns. Look at all the old houses. It's so full of history. There's so many cool things to see. Walk across the Memorial Bridge. We have 3 bridges connecting Portsmouth to Kittery. That Memorial Bridge, especially at night, is so cool any time of year to walk across and just like literally walk into Maine. How many times can you just walk a bridge and cross over into a new state, which is really cool. To eat, I love the goat. There's several goat locations. The one in Portsmouth is really cool. I'm a big fan of pulled pork nachos is my guilty pleasure. Not good for the blood sugar, but it makes me happy. So it's worth the sacrifice. Those are just some of the things I recommend, among many, to do in the Seacoast.
I think that you are very bound. Anyone who is visiting the Seacoast will probably run into Troy. Troy actually ran into one of his good contacts, his friends, this morning at the gas station. So if you do see him around in the Seacoast or Portsmouth or Dover, any of those towns, like be sure to say hello. He will definitely, he always wants to hear your story.
Exactly. I say that at the end of every Seacoast Stories episode, and I mean that. I love meeting new people. I love grilling people about, not like, I don't do this surface level, weather, blah, blah, blah. I get right into it. I want to know about your trauma. I want to know about your path. I want to know about your relationships. I want to know about everything. So anytime you see me, please stop me and say hi. I would love to hear your story.
Thank you, Troy, for coming on. And can you let us know how we can find you? How the Instagram, the Spotify, how can they find your book?
Yeah, so the book Surrender: Guide to Living Your Best Life in Your 20s, just search for it on Amazon. It's a green cover. And then, Seacoast Stories podcast, follow it on Spotify, and you can just follow it on Instagram as well at Seacoast Stories.
Thank you, Troy, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Madi, in your makeshift studio here on the UNH campus.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If you want to hear more from Troy, be sure to check out Seacoast Stories on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow the podcast on Instagram at Seacoast Stories. You can also connect with Troy personally at Troy Farkas on Instagram. And if you're looking for a little more inspiration, check out Troy's book, Surrender: A Guide to Living Your Best Life in Your 20s, available now on Amazon. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on Morning with Madi.